The following is a Claibs online production. Lunch with Claibs and Joe on claibsonline.com.
And a good Monday afternoon to you. I am Joe Roderick, and you are watching Lunch with Claibs and Joe here on claibsonline.com, our Facebook and our Twitter page. Also, our YouTube page, if you go there and subscribe to it at Claibs Online, as we welcome in Mike Claiborne. And Claibs, I'm the one that looks like a lumberjack, but you're wearing the flannel today, I see.
Hey, I was looking for something warm this morning, man. I'm not ready for this, man. I was ready to go to Florida this morning, man.
I was up in Chicago this weekend, so it was in the upper 30s there in the morning. So I came down here, and it felt like a warm front walking out into 50-degree weather. So I'm good. I'm good
now,
with this.
And it's supposed to be, 78, 80 degrees by the middle or end of the week?
Yeah.
Only in St. Louis.
Right. It would have been perfect weather to host the NLDS this week if in a perfect world. And that's what the Cardinals would have been doing. We'll get into all of that. Want to make sure that folks know that we are powered by Ameren, Illinois, driven by Mungenast St. Louis Acura, Mungenast Alton Toyota, also sponsored by the Home Loan Expert, Ryan Kelly. Find him online at thehomeloanexpert.com. Plenty of Cardinal baseball to talk about on the field, off the field, 2020, 2021. But we need to start with the news that came out after the game on Friday, and that was the passing of Bob Gibson just a few weeks after Lou Brock passes away. And Claibs, I know you had a very close relationship to Gibby as well. I never got a chance to meet him or talk to him, so I'm going to give you the floor for this one.
Well, he was a great friend, fierce competitor, everything you'd ever want to be and have as a teammate and as a friend. And he could pitch a little bit too. But, pitching was just one thing he could do, Joe. He was a Harlem Globetrotter. He played basketball at Creighton, did a lot of things. And, he's one of those guys that I don't think it would make a difference what sport it would be. He could handle it. He had that drive. He was tough, and he demanded respect. You have to remember, he grew up in an era, in the civil rights era, and, where there was a lot of racism and a lot of things he couldn't do because of the color of his skin. And he would not take a step back. I mean, he was fearless. And if you got in his road and got in his way, he had no problem letting you know you might want to get the hell out of the way.
Yeah. But you mentioned all those talents too. I saw a clip floating around this weekend of an appearance that Bob Gibson made on the Ed Sullivan show, where he picked up the guitar and started playing it
with Denny McClain, who had won 31 games that year, last guy to win 30 games in Major League Baseball. McClain was playing a Hammond B3 organ, and Gibson was playing a Gibson ES 335 guitar, and it was just kind of fundamental stuff, but he was jamming more or less. But a well-read guy, huge wine connoisseur. He probably would be a sommelier with his knowledge and really a love for it. I told Rick Hummel the other day, he introduced me to wine, the wine that has corks, because I was used to the screw-off caps, in my earlier days. But he was everything you would want in a man, and from a loyalty standpoint, from a competitive standpoint, he did not allow you to fraternize with the opposition when he was playing. We see it all the time. You go to the ballpark and guys are out in the outfield, laughing and playing grab ass before the game. If he saw you doing that, there was going to be a problem. He did not believe in it. I remember him telling me one time that when he got to the Hall of Fame, he didn't know any of the guys in the Hall of Fame because he wouldn't talk to them before, while he was playing. The great All-Star Game story with he and Joe Torre, where Torre was catching him in an All-Star game. It was late in the game. Bob got the save, and Torre was trying to strike up a conversation with him, and Bob had nothing for him. So the offseason rolled around, and the Cardinals made a trade for Joe Torre. So Torre comes up to him in spring training. Hey, Bob, Joe Torre. Yeah, I know you are. He said, yeah, I heard you were one of the guys that recommended that you guys trade for me. I just want to thank you. He said, well, I told him you were a good player, and if we could get you, we should, but I didn't tell him to trade Cepeda for you. I mean, and then he walked away. I mean, and Joe and Bob were probably the two closest friends, I think Bob had three best friends in baseball: Joe Torre, Tim McCarver. No, four: Joe Torre, Tim McCarver, Bill White, and Mike Shannon. Those were his guys, and the bond that they had is something that you only hear about as far as how close they were and how much fun they had. And I think when you win, that has a lot to do with having good friendships. But he was everything you could ever imagine. He had, the 1.12 ERA. I don't think anybody's going to challenge that. He had 24 home runs in his career as a pitcher. And, I think, what do you have? 253 complete games.
255.
255.
Yeah.
And he won 251.
Yeah.
So think about all the games. And if you look at the splits, and I don't know if anybody's got that kind of time, all the games he lost 5-4 or 2-1 or 1-0. You look at that Cy Young year, the 69, 68 year, and look at the record and look at the scores and how many close games he was on the short end of the stick of. But from a personal standpoint, I've been blessed to be in this business a long time, and, I've made a lot of good friends, but I can name the great ones on one hand, and he's certainly on that hand as far as the things that he's taught me and the things we would talk about and the encouragement and, him going to bat for me on some things. I'll never forget him for what he's done for me. And that's why I try and do as much as I can for people behind me, because I learned a lot from Bob Gibson.
I know there's been a lot of tributes and a lot of ways that people have remembered him. I was driving around yesterday, and it was between football games, and I put on the MLB Network radio on satellite radio, and they had a call. They had a game. It wasn't a Cardinal game. It was Vin Scully with his color commentator Bob Gibson on the call for that, and listening to those two talking baseball was incredible, because you're not going to find a better play-by-play voice than Vin Scully. And then to have one of the best pitchers of all time in the booth with him, it's, you learn something listening to those games, I'm sure.
Well, he and I used to sit at Busch Stadium because we would do a pregame show and then we'd do a postgame. And I'd sit and watch the game with him, and he was seeing things out. Really? Where? Shit, I didn't see that. I mean, he just had such an uncanny knack for how the game worked, and he knew how to pitch the hitters. And, he was a guy who was smart enough. There's a couple of guys that used to hit him well, like Billy Williams hit him well. Ralph Milner hit him well. John Milner, I'm sorry. I went to high school with a Ralph Milner. And they hit him well. So he wouldn't pitch to those guys as much, but he'd pitch or he'd walk him and get the next guy. I mean, and, the legendary items about him hitting people. He hit 112 people in his career. And I said, yeah, but how many did he actually throw at or buzz a tower that didn't go down, where he was able to still send a message? They don't have a statistic for that, but, there's quite a few people Bob Gibson got the attention of.
It was easier back in the day to just hit a guy. You didn't have to waste 4 pitches and intentionally walk him too.
You didn't get warnings. You didn't get warnings or any of that stuff. So you can go out there and have target practice if you wanted to, and you could probably get away with it. But when you get hit with and they didn't have a radar gun back then, but I would venture to think that Bob Gibson was a mid-90s, high 90s guy. He threw 2 pitches. He threw a slider and a fastball, and then he mixed in a curve on rare occasions. And one of the most rare occasions was the 68 World Series where he had the 17 strikeouts. And he was telling me, he said, I kind of played with a curveball, and I knew that they were going to go off my scouting report, what they've seen, because, back then you didn't face a team in regular season that you would see in the World Series. So he said, I knew they were going to go off the scouting report. So I decided to throw a curveball, and they didn't have it in the scouting report. And that's when he started dealing.
You mentioned some of Bob Gibson's best friends. You mentioned Tim McCarver. I know Tim McCarver was also close with Lou Brock. Have you talked to Tim at all these past few weeks? I have not. I talked to him after Lou died. I know I talked to Dan McLaughlin, and he talked to Tim, and, Tim was taking it pretty rough because they traveled. Bob and Tim traveled together, man. I mean, they were really close. And I'm going to give Tim some breathing room because this is really tough for him, and we'll catch up. Yeah, I know a lot of, people missed hearing Tim McCarver in the booth this year with Danny Mac, and a lot of people probably thinking of him after these rough few weeks for
sure.
Cardinal fans dealing with that. That news came late Friday night and really took the attention away from the fact that the Cardinals season came to an end Friday in San Diego as they lost in the wild card round in Game 3, shut out by the bullpen of the San Diego Padres. And it was, you know what, it was a fitting way to end the season, because over the 60 games, the amount of 0 one-run games, the struggling offense that we saw from the Cardinals, why not go out against a bullpen that was taxed in the first 2 games of the series and not be able to muster up anything against them? And I don't know what the right words to put for this 2020 season would be for this Cardinal team, but I know that you're going to have people that make the excuse that, oh, you can't really tell what kind of team they were in 60 games. No, I think we pretty much could tell what kind of team this was. And we knew what kind of team this was, and it was the team we thought it was going to be back in February and March. We knew that they were going to have very good pitching for most of the year, and a lot of those pitchers weren't even around for those 60 games, and we knew there were going to be a lot of question marks around the offense. And that's exactly what happened. You had way too many guys hitting 220, 240 that, you know, some games just didn't have it at all. And it showed. You know,
it's funny. You're spot on, right? You are who you are. You are where you finish. You finish where you're supposed to be. And you talk about the averages. You know, when Fowler wasn't playing, they ran out some outfields where all 3 of them were hitting under 200.
180.
You know, we had, when Fowler wasn't playing, they had an outfield and an infield. They had 4 guys in the lineup that were hitting under 200, and you can't sustain anything like that. I mean, it's just not. It's not feasible. They rolled the dice and thought that they would find lightning in a bottle that was already in a Cardinal uniform. Well, it didn't work. And I think we can all admit that it didn't work. I didn't think anyone really progressed as far as their skill level. I don't think nobody had a career season, even though it was 60 games.
You saw a bright spot out of Carlson those last 2 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. But, you know, it took Carlson having to go back out and get it fixed before he could come back. And let's face it, Dylan Carlson's going to be a really good player someday. He's 21, and just being around him and getting to know him, he has a real good idea of what this game is all about, and he just needs some time to play. And I think you're going to put him in a situation, just say, hey, look, man, such and such, outfield, left field, center field, right field, whatever position, it's your position, it's your job. Be ready to work every day, and just let them play. I mean, Joe, there's too many teams in baseball. They have young prospects that they just throw them out there and say, all right, big boy, it's all yours. Go for it. Instead of being up and down in the minors and they get all messed up, lose confidence, and too many people in their ear. But I think in Carlson's case, I think he's going to be a really good player. And I think they're going to have to find some other players to play around him.
And that's the thing. You look at questions going into the offseason, and I think it's I would, you know, unless they go out there, which they should go out there and get a big bat to protect Goldschmidt. I think Carlson is that cleanup hitter. I think he starts the year as that cleanup hitter, unless you could find somebody better to be that cleanup hitter. And I don't know who's out there.
I'm putting Carlson third, and I'm hitting Goldschmidt fourth. I don't know why they didn't do that. Because, you know, here's the thing. Carlson, is going to see better pitches because they don't want to pitch to Goldschmidt with people on base. So he's going to see a few more pitches that he can probably handle. Goldschmidt is fine in that position. I think the key is you got to find a 5-hitter. Because I think cleanup hitters have a different message and meaning now than what they used to. You need a run producer for sure. You need a guy who's not going to strike out so much, and a guy who can move runners along, but, you know, a guy that can get you a fly ball when you need it. But I would put Carlson in the third spot and just see what he can do.
What about Carlson second and Goldschmidt still third, and you go out and you find that that's the thing. You don't have to sit here.
Hey, not a bad idea. I mean, you know what, Joe? There's so many things you can throw on the board right now, and you say, it's not a bad idea.
Yeah, and you're going into this offseason thinking completely different than you ever have if you are a Cardinal fan, because this is the first offseason that you're going into. If you're a Cardinal National League fan, this is the first time in your life that you're going into an offseason with a DH to plan for. That DH isn't going anywhere. That DH is there to stay in the National League, whether you like it or not. It's there, and you don't have to sit there and go, well, what about Bader? What about O'Neill? What about – you don't have to worry about all these outfielders. You can go out there and just get a legit designated hitter to bat fourth in that lineup day in and day out.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's a guy out there. I think the question is, how do you get him? Do you sign one? Do you trade for one? Is it a guy with a bad contract? Is it a guy that they're not going to re-sign? I mean, there's a lot of different scenarios that come into play here. But I agree with you. The DH is here. And I also think you got to find a guy. The one thing that killed this team was strikeouts. Man, they struck out a lot. And they've got to have a better approach offensively. And I don't know whether that's a hitting coach or what. But somebody's got to come in and talk about a different approach than what we saw the last couple of years, because it was hard to watch. It was hard to watch sometimes. And that doesn't mean that they weren't putting the effort in. Now, granted, I wasn't around them like I've been in past seasons to see the work well before games, but I don't think that's changed very much. I know you're working hard, but let's try and work smart and then hard. And I think you get more results. So there are a lot of things that are going to be dealt with in this offseason with regard to talent. How do you get it? But here's something else you need to take into account, and you kind of touched on it. Not only is the DH here to stay, but you're going to have, for the first time for the Cardinals, I really think they're going to have to go out and hustle to create interest in fans. I don't think fans will want to see another edition that we've seen the last 2 years. They want a little bit more entertainment, a little bit more excitement, a little bit more oomph in the lineup. And with all the sports, as we saw this year, that were playing at the same time, the competition for the sports fan has never been greater. And I got news for you. There are not enough sports fans to fill every ballpark, football stadium, arena as you think, because a lot of them are sitting at home, they're watching the games on TV, or they're listening to it on the radio, because now with technology, it's more convenient to watch on TV. So they're going to have to come up with a plan to create interest in saying, hey, come check us out now, because we've got this guy and that guy, and we're going to do some things differently. I think this is one of the few times they've ever had to go out and actually recruit and actually go out and beat the bushes to get people interested in Cardinal baseball.
And that's something that can easily be done with adding that one bat. And then again, you and I were a little bit closer than I was with covering the team this year, being at the stadium, but neither one of us got to get in the locker room or anything like we're used to. How far away do you think a guy like Nolan Gorman is?
At least a year.
You think so?
Yeah, because he didn't do anything this year. He worked in the alternate camp, but he didn't see anybody but his own teammates. He's got to play. He's got to see better pitching. When I talked to him a little bit during the winter, and he talked about that transition from when he first got into A-ball to where he finished at, and he realized he had a lot of work to do. He had a lot of work to do on his approach, his physical conditioning, and just his overall mindset of dealing with the challenge of trying to ascend in an organization. So he's got to play for a year. Now, that doesn't mean he can come in next year and maybe do something in spring training where you say, instead of starting him in AA, maybe we start him in AAA. And maybe we get a taste of him. But I don't think he's a guy, from what I saw in the brief time he played last year, I don't think he can help you next year.
Yeah, we did hear Mo at the end of the year talk about Matthew Liberatore being a name that we could see next year.
That's a different story.
Yeah, and I think that we'll always have Gorman and Liberatore will always be locked in due to their relationship, due to their age, due to their past. So I think when you see a name like Liberatore being put up there in a major league rotation or bullpen, I think a lot of Cardinal fans will think that Gorman's not too far behind. And on top of that, you talk about depth within the organization. I don't know what names are there after those guys.
Oh, they got a couple of guys. Montero's another guy that's turned some heads. You know what you sounded like, and it's funny. and there's a parent right now that's watching this. It's like in Little League when little Johnny, his teammate, is playing on a better team, or he's moved on, and you think your little Johnny is as good as that kid because they were on the same team. But the problem is your little Johnny wasn't as good of a player, which is why he didn't play and the other guy did. So, and when you talk about Gorman and Liberatore, they've been together a long time, but one has advanced a little bit more than the other, but that doesn't mean they won't be able to reunite in the near future.
Right. And, we did lose a year of getting to see them play together in the same organization and, maybe move their way up A-ball, double A-ball together. So that was something that we did miss out on this year with them being just at the alternative site. So
right.
I think, though, outside of Liberatore, I think there shouldn't be any surprises pitching. I think the pitching is all locked in. I haven't looked at whose contract is up on the pitching staff outside of Wainwright. I was going to say, I don't know who they're losing out on, but God, it was so deep. It was so deep.
Control on just about everybody else.
Yeah.
Because Michaelis is already signed. They have control of everybody else. So there's no real urgency. Now, if you're the Cardinals, do you quietly start talking to Flaherty about a deal where you can buy out some of his arbitration years?
Is that something that he would want?
Well, I think if they make him the right offer.
Because he's been very outspoken about the way contracts are handled in baseball.
Yeah, but until he's able to do something about it, and I don't know if he can, do you take the money up front and, maybe you don't make it as long of a deal as, a lot of these guys do. See, if it's me and I got a couple of years of arbitration, all right, you can buy me out for 2 years. I tell you what, buy me out for 3. And then after that third year, I'm unrestricted. Maybe I might want to resign because now I have a better idea what the market looks like. I think here's the other thing, Joe, and we're just talking about Flaherty on a contract that who knows when that's going to happen. But with regard to Molina and Wainwright, I think what you're going to see there is, I know Yachty wants to continue to play. So I don't know if anybody's going to pay Yachty or Molina $20 million. Okay?
Right.
But I know some teams that would pay him 10. I know some teams that would pay him 12. I know some teams that'll give him that money up, that hard money, and then give him incentives to get him to a number he may be more comfortable with. And I think the Cardinals should probably look at it that way too. They've done it with Wainwright with some reasonable success. I think you can do it with Yachty, and I think if he wants to play 2 years, tell you what we'll do. We're going to plug in enough incentives that if you make certain incentives, we roll you over to the next year, no questions asked, starting base salary at this number.
After seeing the reaction that Yachty and Wainwright both had to the passing of Bob Gibson and the passing of Lou Brock, and knowing that those guys were outside of Lou's rookie year with the Cubs, those guys were lifelong Cardinals and well beyond that, how important do you think something like that would be to those two putting on a different uniform for a year?
I think it would be tough. If this is all you know, the only time you see that if a guy's chasing a championship, hey, I want to go to a team that's got a chance to win. I don't think those two guys are made up like that. I think if you just show them the respect that they deserve and what they've meant to your organization, you can probably get a deal done. You don't want to turn it into something personal. You don't want to have a misunderstanding here. Fortunately, John Mozeliak's done a majority of their contracts. So I think you can get something done. But I think you make a good point. It is important probably for them to retire in the uniform they were born in.
Yeah, we need to move on from the Cardinals, get into some other things. Just want to remind people, this show driven by Munganast St. Louis Acura, Munganast Alton Toyota. We need to get with Jamie now that the Cardinal season is done. Our Mondays are going to be wide open for doing remotes. We need to get out there to one of the Munganast locations. Probably need to hit up your boy Eddie over there in Alton, Illinois, and maybe do a show from there before it gets too cold to do it outside. With the roof still open there. There's plenty of other places, Claibs, that we need to take this show on the road to on Mondays. So we got plenty of time. If you're interested in having us out at your business, hit us up and let us know. we will be happy to come out to you. The Munganess location, the St. Louis Acura, 13720 in Manchester Road in St. Louis. In Alton, Illinois, it's 850 Homer Adams Parkway in Alton for Munganess Alton Toyota. The ALDS starts today. Astros and A's. That game is being played at Dodger Stadium, where the Astros will go to Dodger Stadium. No fans, but they'll still have to pass by some security, some personnel for that. But the Astros are the lower seed, so they do not get to be in the Dodgers clubhouse, which I think would have rubbed them the wrong way.
It'd be something way wrong with that if they were in the Dodger clubhouse. That wouldn't work.
Yeah, the A's are the higher seeded team, so they will be in the Dodgers clubhouse for that. And then that's the early game that starts in about 3 hours from now, about 2.5 hours from now, and then the night game tonight is being played at Petco. Or no, not wait, is that one at Petco? Yeah, that one's at Petco. Yeah, and that is the Yankees and the Rays. I
got to tell you something. There's a lot of good stuff going on. You got 2 NFL games.
Yeah.
And you got 2 baseball games going on today, and you have 3 major events going on this evening. And, the Yankees in prime time. I mean, it's going to be some interesting TV watching tonight. Yeah, I like Tampa, by the way. I like Tampa to get to the World Series.
Tomorrow you get 4 baseball games and Game 4 of the NBA Finals, so that'll be a nice little Tuesday too. So a lot of sports going on, and I've said this: it's going to get to the point where the NBA Finals are going to end, and then you're going to have the basketball. Yeah, the basketball season's going to end. Baseball season's going to end. November is going to feel like, without football, Tuesday and Wednesday in November is going to feel like it did back in April and May with no sports.
That's a good point you make. And I'm a little surprised that one of these conferences hasn't decided to try and move their games to a Tuesday or a Wednesday night. Just to fill the void.
The MAC is going to Tuesday. The MAC has said that all of theirs will be weeknight games. So when the MAC gets
let me start over again about the conferences. I'm talking about, and I shouldn't poo-poo on the MAC. It's a credible
How much
conference.
Entertainment do you need on a Tuesday and Wednesday night that MAC football can't scratch that itch for you to get you to bridge that gap in the week?
You know what? I enjoy college football. I do have a life, so I'm thinking about those people who are casual fans compared to the hardcore guy that would watch the MAC at 10 o'clock in the morning on a Tuesday.
Right.
You know what? I may stick my head in the door and catch a little bit of it, but I won't be obsessed with it. I won't have depth charts out trying to see who's going to be.
If you're flipping around if everything else is reruns that you don't want to see for the 5th time, you'll check out a Miami Ohio game against Marshall. You'll watch that. You absolutely will. Hey, so college football. We'll get into some of the other stuff, but we'll talk football. College football. Mizzou goes 0-2. On the year, and Drinkwitz is it's been a rough start for him. LSU coming up their next game. Things aren't going to get much easier for Mizzou. I think they're just going to have to use this year as a learning process.
There's no question. I agree with you wholeheartedly. I am impressed with the fact that they fight. Okay, they don't roll over. They're not the homecoming fodder, more or less. They put up a fight, but you know what? They just don't have enough good players yet, bottom line. And, I know they've recruited hard. And I look at UT. Jeremy Pruitt's done a phenomenal job down there. And, Tennessee, no matter who their coach was always getting good players. But it looks like Pruitt knows what he's doing with good players. And who's to say that isn't Eli Drinkwitz in a year or so?
Right. And, they have had to stop and start with installing anything there in the program too. So you're not going to fire him after 1 year. You're not going to fire him after year 2. You're still going to give him a little bit of a benefit of the doubt for a few years.
You got to let him get at least 3 years of recruiting on the field.
Yeah.
By year 3, you'll have a pretty good idea of what you have. But I don't think anybody's even remotely thinking about getting rid of him. After all, if you get rid of him, who's going to want the job?
Should be noted, Barry Odom's Arkansas defense held Mississippi State to only 14 points this weekend.
Well, he's a good defensive coach.
Yeah,
but he was the head coach here, and there's a big difference.
There absolutely is. Hey, week 4 of the NFL. You mentioned the 2 games tonight. They're 2 really, really good games tonight.
Mm-hmm.
You're getting the early game, which I don't know if you saw. The Patriots flew to Kansas City this morning. They shut down the highway in Boston to allow their 5 charter buses to go to the airport. They flew out to Kansas City. I think they were set to arrive in Kansas City around 11 a.m. or so, and then go to Arrowhead for a 6 o'clock game, 6:30 game. So they were going to be spending about 5 hours in Arrowhead today.
I'm surprised they didn't dress before they got on the plane and just get off the plane and just go play.
I mean, that's a long. I mean, these NFL players are creatures of habit, getting to the game, getting to the stadium at a certain time. And that's 5+ hours.
Right, no, you know what? A lot of these guys get there that early. Guys want to get out of the house. Remember, it's a road game, so they want to be there a little early anyway. So they try to make it as close to what you would call a creature of habit environment as they can. So I don't think it's going to have that big of an impact on their preparation.
I do. And then the later game, the game that kicks off about an hour and a half after that, is Packers and Falcons. So you have a lot of star power in this doubleheader tonight.
A lot of passing going on tonight.
I need a lot of running out of the Packers, Claibs. I need a lot of running out of Aaron Jones of the Packers. That's what I'm in need of tonight.
If you watch the Falcon defense, you might see quite a bit of that, because there's a team that's in a state of flux, man. How do we do on the picks this week? I didn't pay attention.
I have those. Let me bring those up right now. So the games, the 5 games that we chose from this week were Colts at Bears, Jaguars at Bengals, Saints at Lions, Cardinals at Panthers, Bills at the Raiders. We all picked the Bears. We were wrong. We all picked the Bills. We were all right on that. And we all picked the Saints. So there were 3 of those games that all 5 of us, me, you, Frank, Brian Hoffman, and Andy Hanselman, all picked the exact same team for those. The Bengals, 4 of us picked the Bengals. Andy was the only one that picked the Jaguars on that one. And then you and I picked the Panthers, while Frank Hoff and Andy all picked the Cardinals. So, Claibs, you are still in first, 14-5 overall. Brian Hoffman is on your tail at 12-7.
He's got work to do.
He does.
Yeah,
he does have some work to do. So we're picking all these games too. We're going straight up. I try to pick the games that have the smallest point spreads on them for the week, and that's why some of those games. I mean, nobody cared about Bengals Jaguars, but they were 2 teams that weren't that great. So the point spread was like 2.5.
Yeah, you know what? I think those games are fun because you got a brand new quarterback in Burrow. You got a Jaguar team that's trying to decide on whether they want to really tank it or not, and they're a few players short on both sides of the ball. So I don't have a problem with that. And I was always a straight up guy. I was never a big point spreads guy. I know it's a big deal, but I'm looking at the result on the scoreboard, and if you won, you had more points. Those are the points I worry about. So, who's in first place again?
You were in first place.
Right,
19 games in, 14-5 is your record straight up. You talk about exciting games. How about this? They lost yesterday. They're 1-3 on the year. The Cowboys, Dak Prescott threw for 502 yards yesterday. So far on the season, Dak Prescott has thrown, as I scroll through here, 1,690 yards. I believe I saw the stat earlier that no quarterback has ever thrown for over 5,500 yards in a season. Dak is on pace to put up, I think it's around 6,500 yards now on the season.
And they don't want to pay him. That's the sad thing about this. The Cowboys don't want to give him a long-term contract. I mean, this guy has done everything. But with that said, there's another issue. That means that Ezekiel Elliott's not running the ball that much, and he's the premier runner in the game. It also tells me that I watched Dallas a little bit yesterday. They can't stop a nosebleed, man. I mean, their defensive line is getting shredded to pieces, and their linebackers are not forcing. They're not coming up and supporting. And it's a train wreck right now. And they got some good coaches on that defense. And they better figure it out quick, or somebody's going to be without a job by the bye.
Tell you, Alton's own Ezekiel Elliott, 54 yards rushing on the season, yesterday in the game, I should say, 8 receptions for 71 yards. So he's still getting touches.
Yeah,
He
but
touched
you
the
know
ball
what?
20 times yesterday and
Yeah,
had 120 yards.
yeah, but that's a guy who should be touching it that many times, minimum carrying it. I think Ezekiel Elliott is a guy that should be touching the ball at least 30 times a game, 35 between run and pass. And he should be he should be around 200 yards. He should be around 200 yards.
Yeah, it's again. I mean, yeah, for what he's getting paid too, he should get about 30 touches a game for that. So again, you're 14-5, Claibs. You're 14-5. You're in first place right now with that,
and for the foreseeable future.
Right. I mean, yeah, you could have a bad week. The thing is, Hoff can't pick against you. You and Hoff do not see Frank too. Frank's 11-8. I'm 10-9. Andy's 9-10. Like, I see everybody's picks going into it. Nobody else can see anybody's picks. So I don't know if we need to bring an independent party in there to stop that.
No, I don't need anybody picking off of what I picked. This is fine. They don't
that's what I'm saying. I don't know if I need to find it for me, because
I tell you what, if you have a shutout, you win 5 in a row on the weekend, then we're gonna make a change.
Well, and I went out, and usually I will announce my picks when I do Weekend Joe. I took this weekend off doing a show with the Cardinals schedule and everything. It just didn't feel right doing a show, but I made sure I texted Andy my picks. So they would be on record, so I could show that I had my picks on record in case I went 5-0 and somebody else, didn't have that great of a week. So I made sure that it was all noted. Finally, we mentioned the NBA Finals tomorrow night, Game 4. Lakers up 2-1. I'm shocked that the Heat were able to pull off that victory last night. Jimmy Butler, how about this? The first time that LeBron James has ever been outscored in an NBA Finals game by an opponent, by anybody.
That's wild. That's incredible. I didn't know that. I knew he had 40, and I knew he, was just instrumental in a lot of success. I like watching Jimmy Butler play because he's kind of I don't want to say old school, but he's a guy that doesn't shoot a ton of threes. He's not a guy that's dunking all the time. He just finds a way to get to the basket and score. He puts himself at the free throw line. He gets his other teammates involved. He's got some issues. But right now, he's as locked in as anybody.
Yeah, he Jimmy Butler was just they needed him last night. Another game where the Heat are missing 2 of their best players.
Yeah,
and it really did. It looked like it was done for them. I don't know. I mean, the NBA doesn't need a sweep. The NBA needs their season to go on at least about 5-6 more days.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think I was talking to Frank Cusimano about the fact that we could easily see a 7-game series.
I don't know about that.
Well, here's the difference, and it's nothing against Frank Vogel, but Eric Spoelstra can coach, man.
Yeah,
and he doesn't get the credit. And you and I have talked about this before. He's in the top 4 or 5 guys in the league, and
easily, especially with how long he's been around too, and how many different reincarnations that team has gone through. You look at the fact that he had LeBron, Bosh, Wade, had them, was successful with them, lost them, stuck around to get back to this point again, says a lot about him. I do want to. So it wasn't the first time. Jimmy Butler is the first player to outscore, out rebound, and out assist LeBron James in an NBA Finals game that includes LeBron's teammates. So all 3 categories.
That's saying something. I think he's going to have to do it at least one more time if they want to continue this thing going for a while.
Yeah, as I look here, this was the 53rd time that LeBron James was outscored in a finals game. But when you look at the Jimmy Butler stat, it was all of those stats combined. LeBron, the complete player with the numbers that he's able to put up week in, week out. And hey, before we go here, good news for those that live in St. Louis, that are fans of the youth sports, have kids in youth sports, as it looks like some of the restrictions are being lifted by Dr. Sam Page. And it looks like some of these high school football teams are going to be able to play. I think DeSmet and CBC are playing this weekend, right? I think I saw
it's a pretty good schedule this weekend, and the weather should be really good also. But now I understand what's the crowd limit. Was it 50 people? I think it's something very small.
Yeah.
But you know what?
Some are doing 50 people, others are doing, one parent per kid, or, two people per kid. And I think a lot of that depends on the sports.
Yeah. You know what? I'm happy that they're getting an opportunity. I was not a proponent of them rushing to play. But obviously Dr. Page has found some information that he's more comfortable with. And let's just hope that we can get through this season safely, where, these kids and coaches and other people don't contract the virus. And let's just see what happens, man. I mean, let's face it. The NFL is dealing with this now.
Yep.
And we've seen some colleges deal with it. So it's not acceptable that it would happen on the high school level, but it probably will happen on the high school level at some point.
The Titans had no positive cases as of this morning, so they look to be back on track. I think they were shooting for one more day of all negatives, and then they would reopen the facility. So they have that. The Patriots, I haven't heard of any other outbreaks on the Patriots outside of Cam Newton. So that looks to be like an isolated situation there, which is really shocking, given that he's the quarterback. He's the quarterback. He talks to he's up close with so many people. It really is surprising that he's the only one.
Yeah, for now, and let's hope it stays that way. Now, he won't be active tonight, though.
He will not. No.
Yeah. I didn't know if he had enough consecutive negative tests, would they run him out there? But
they said he's out. Yeah, he tested positive, he's out. I don't know how many days.
I'd rather for him to be out and healthy and eventually get healthy compared to, being in a situation where it gets worse.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. Anything lined up for you this week, interview-wise, now that the Cardinals are done?
No, you know what? We're going to kind of scale it back this week, but next week we're going to get it going. I would suggest to everybody who hasn't had a chance to go to the site to check out our interview with Bill White, Bob Gibson, and Mike Shannon from a few years ago. It's a riot, man. It's really something fun to hear Bob talk, and Bill White, one of his best friends in the game, and certainly Mike Shannon. It was a lot of fun. But we got some ideas for next week. We're going to get Ryan Kelly on for sure and talk about his climb and some other things. But we'll get deep into it next week for sure.
Yeah, you can check all that stuff out. Go to Ryan Kelly's Facebook page, his Twitter page, his Instagram. He was posting all about it there. And then find Ryan Kelly online at thehomeloanexpert.com. October 4th, if you go back, if you want to go back, it should be very easy to go into the Claibs Online webpage and scroll back and find all of the This Day in Cardinal histories. There are so many memories throughout the since we've started doing this on March 26th, and we're going to keep going. Once we hit November, it'll change to This Day in St. Louis sports history, and we'll find stuff to get us all the way to March 25th and make it a full calendar year. If you go back and you scroll through, there are plenty of Bob Gibson memories. There's plenty of Lou Brock memories. It just so happens October 4th was audio Harry Carey calling a Bill White home run on this day. So that was October 4th. And then Kamish starts talking about the start that and the pitching performance that Bob Gibson had in that World Series, the 64 World Series, right?
Yeah.
The 64 World Series. And then tomorrow just so happens to be another Bob Gibson memory. So October 6th is another Bob Gibson memory for that. You're going to get a lot of Bob Gibson and Lou Brock memories in the month of October.
You can never have enough of them.
Yeah, so there'll be plenty of ways to remember them there in the archives at claibsonline.com. We want to thank everybody for watching, for listening to us over the past 45 minutes. We appreciate that each and every week here on Lunch with Claibs and Joe, either on Facebook. You could like us on Facebook if you haven't done so yet. Follow us on Twitter or subscribe to the YouTube page. The video is always up there as well. Plenty of ways to watch and listen and subscribe to us wherever you subscribe to your podcasts. Just search for Claibs Online. For Mike Claiborne, I'm Joe Roderick. This has been Lunch with Claibs and Joe here on claibsonline.com. Have a great day, everybody.